My name is Lynn Finnegan Bailey. I'm a Connecticut beekeeper and friend of the Girl Scouts of Connecticut. I'm going to talk to you today about flowers and bees and why they're so important for us and our survival. And I'm going to show you a few things in my apiary and take a look at what an apiary is. It is a bee yard where your bees are housed. I have 2 hives, and in that hive is a colony of bees. It's a beautiful day in the springtime, in May, and the bees are coming in and out, going and collecting nectar and pollen from the flowers today. So, why are flowers so important? Flowers provide a sticky substance called nectar. That nectar is extracted from the honeybee by way of its tongue. It goes down into the flower, gets the nectar out, sucks it up with its tongue, puts it into its honey gut, and then flies back to the hive and basically barfs that into the mouth of another honeybee, and then that honeybee puts it into a cell, begins the process of transforming that into honey, mostly by dehydrating it a little bit. So nectar from flowers is what becomes honey. And the other really important thing that flowers provide is pollen. And you've probably seen pollen on a honeybee close up. I did take a video of some of the honeybees coming into the hive with the pollen packed in their back legs. You may have seen some video of bees going from flower to flower. Bees have hairs, and bees are insects with 6 legs. I'm going to show you a big close-up of a bee here. This is not a murder hornet. It's a plastic 5-inch replica of a honeybee. So a honeybee has 6 legs. Their back legs have something called a pollen packet in, and that is where they gather and push pollen and store it until they can get back to their hive and pack it into the frames and the cells in the hive. How do honeybees find the flowers? They find the flowers because they're really smart insects and they have a really cool way of communicating. They have actually 2 sets of eyes. They have big eyes like this. Those are their compound eyes, and they see in ultraviolet. So they can see the nectar in a way that we can't, whether a flower is a good source for nectar, because they have these eyes and ultraviolet vision. They also have a little set of eyes, so to speak, on top of their head, and that helps them see sunlight even on a cloudy day. And those are both important features for locating flowers, which of course is their pollen and nectar source. Pollen and nectar is what the food that the bees feed to their larvae so that their colony can continue to populate. And I'm going to open up the hive and I'm going to show you what the pollen looks like when it's packed into a cell. Again, the service that the honeybee does with the flower is pollinate. If it weren't for pollination, we would not have the food that we have available to us. Honeybees are the insect that does the largest amount of pollination. 1/3 of our food crop is due to honeybees pollinating food sources. When a honeybee goes from flower to flower and transforms that pollen, gets it all over their hairy body, their legs, their antennae, and then goes to another flower, because of the anatomy of a flower, the structure of the flower, some of that pollen drops off and then fertilizes the plant so that a nut can grow, a vegetable can grow, or a fruit can grow, apples can grow, almonds can grow. That is all done because of the transferring of pollen that the honeybee does from flower to flower. So flowers aren't just pretty things to say thank you, I love you, congratulations. They're serving a purpose. So if you want to go ahead and plant some flowers in your yard, that would be a wonderful thing. Another thing that you could do is not mow your lawn right away and knock down the dandelions. Dandelions are the first source of nectar that honeybees get early in the spring. Their first source of pollen is from skunk cabbage. You usually think of skunk cabbage not as a very attractive flower, but to bees it's very important because it comes up really early in the spring. And skunk cabbage flowers before its leaves even come out. It's a very unusual plant that way. We can see the pollen come in from the skunk cabbage because it's sort of a light, pale green color. And we know that is from skunk cabbage. And that's being brought in very, very early on to help to feed the colony. So I'm going to go into this hive and see if I can show you what nectar looks like when it's packed into the frames, into the cells, and what pollen looks like when it's packed into the cells. Again, those are the important sources that the bees use to feed the other bees. It's also, the nectar is also what transforms into honey that we can then take and also eat. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now this is the hive. This is where the bees are living, right in here. I was in this hive yesterday and put a honey super. This smaller box is a honey super, and there's probably not much of anything in there this morning. Oh, but look, they are up in there. Oh, this is a good frame to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little shake here because this is the perfect frame to show you. So I'm going to shake these honeybees down into the frame so I can get a better look. They're going to fly around. It's going to be a little exciting. Told ya. Okay. So now we have a really good look at this. See all that color in there? You see two things. You see glistening. The glistening is the nectar that the worker bee, the field bee has brought in and barfed into the mouth of another one and then shoved into the cells. The different color yellows are the pollen that they carry in from the flowers. So that's a really good example of the nectar and the pollen. And again, nectar and pollen are what the bees are feeding to the larva. Look at that, beautiful. This is gonna feed them for quite some time. You can see some of the bees have their heads stuck right in the cells, doing their thing. And this is what it looks like before they build all the comb out. That's a plastic foundation under there, and then that is work that has been done by the bees, making wax. Bees have a lot of jobs, making wax and making this comb for them too. Coneflower is a good plant. Milkweed is a great. Cardinal flower, asters, goldenrod, even the dandelions, even things that you think are weeds like jewelweed looks like a roadside weed, and a lot of people do consider it a weed, but the bees consider it a food source and a nectar source and love it. And when the bees do their job, they're helping us with our food. So plant flowers in your yard and do a little experiment. And it takes them about an hour to get enough nectar in their honey gut and then bring it back to the hive. How do they tell the other bees where the flowers are? Really cool question. They do a dance. Yeah. After a honeybee, a field bee comes in, barfs her nectar into another bee's mouth, and then that bee puts it into the cell. The bee will do a little dance. It's a specific dance that tells the location of the flowers and maybe even what kind of flower it is. And those three little sort of eyes on top of their head that help to see the sun, they even give the location in terms of where the sun is so that the other bees can identify where to go. So they communicate through dance. The other bees kind of feel it, sense it, smell, and know where to go to find the flowers. And it's all in the pattern. They call it a waggle dance. It's all in the pattern and the way they move on that frame, which is really kind of a cool thing to think that you could know where a flower is by the way your sister bee is dancing on a frame. Really kind of cool. So bees, super cool. Hope you like them as much as I do. Plant some flowers, do a good thing. And thank you for listening, and I hope you earn your flower badge very soon.